The Galactic Academic Consortium's flagship station, Valoris Prime, had hosted thousands of alien cadets over its two-century history. It had welcomed Threxians with their six-limbed grace, Valari who communicated through bioluminescent pulses, and Keth delegates who breathed methane through silver filtration masks. The station prided itself on inclusivity, on the seamless integration of 63 species under one academic roof. It had never hosted a human before Mara Ellison. She arrived on the third rotation of the Keth semester, a compact woman with dark skin, close-cropped hair, and eyes the color of deep ocean water. She carried a single duffel bag and a silence that unsettled people in ways they couldn't articulate. The intake officers noted she listed her homeworld as Earth, Sector 0. Under special environmental adaptations, the form simply read, Death World Native. Standard precautions advised. Nobody quite knew what that meant. They would learn. Mara had been assigned to the Advanced Medical Sciences track, a program overseen entirely by Dr. Kale Veyron, a Threxian of considerable academic reputation and considerably less academic integrity. Veyron was brilliant in the precise, narrow way that certain predators are efficient, perfectly adapted to his environment, completely dependent on it remaining unchanged. He had built his program over 40 years. He controlled admissions, evaluations, research assignments, and the private recommendation letters that determined whether a cadet's career launched or collapsed. Other faculty called him exacting. Cadets called him something else, in whispers, when the corridor sensors cycled off. Mara had been on station for 11 days when she first noticed the pattern. It started with small things. A Valari cadet named Thessin who went pale, or whatever the Valari equivalent was, a dimming of their light, whenever Veyron entered a room. A Keth student, Orith, who had switched research tracks mid-semester for reasons marked personal in the academic files, which was odd, because Keth didn't have a concept of personal in the human sense. They communicated everything. Except, apparently, this. Mara had grown up on Earth. Specifically, she had grown up in a region once called the Pacific Northwest, which humans had mostly rewilded after the rebuilding. She had spent her childhood learning which mushrooms were edible and which would kill you in 6 hours, how to read the body language of animals that weighed 4 times what she did, how to move quietly through spaces where being noticed meant being dead. She was very good at noticing things. She started keeping notes. The incident in the med bay happened on the 42nd day. Mara had stayed late to finish calibrating the protein synthesis arrays, the kind of tedious, meticulous work that the other cadets rotated through quickly but that she found oddly soothing. The station's night cycle had dimmed the corridor lighting to a blue-gray ambience. Most of the lab had emptied. She heard the door seal behind her before she heard Veyron's voice. Cadet Ellison. He stood near the secondary entrance, flanked by 2 of his senior research assistants, both Threxian, both large, their 4 upper limbs folded in what Mara had learned was a deliberately casual posture meant to communicate that they were not blocking the exit, despite the fact that they were absolutely blocking the exit. Working late again. Calibration takes time, she said. She didn't look up from the array immediately. She finished the input she was entering. Then she looked up. She'd been in the forests of the Cascades at 14 when she rounded a bend and came face to face with a black bear. Not a large one. Not aggressive, particularly. But large enough, and close enough, that every ancient circuit in her nervous system had fired at once: assess, calculate, respond. She felt the same circuits fire now. "I've been reviewing your research proposal," Veyron said, moving closer. "It has potential. Significant potential, actually. I think we could develop it into something quite remarkable, with the right mentorship." He paused. The kind of mentorship that requires a certain mutual investment. The research assistants hadn't moved. They didn't need to. The implication was architecture, not threat, the room itself arranged to make clear how much space she did or did not have. Mara set down the calibration tool. She turned to face him fully. Later, When she tried to explain to the investigators what she had felt in that moment, she struggled to find the right words. It wasn't fear, exactly. Fear implied uncertainty, and she wasn't uncertain. It wasn't anger either, though anger came, it always came eventually, hot and useful. What she felt first was something older than both. Something that lived in the part of the human brain that predated language. Threat. Identified. Respond. I'm going to stop you there, she said. Her voice was calm. Not the calm of someone suppressing panic, but the calm of someone who has already finished calculating and is now simply executing. I need you to understand something about me, Dr. Veyron. He smiled. It was the smile of someone who had done this before and found it reliably effective. Cadet. I grew up on Earth, she said. Real Earth. Not the diplomatic quarter, not the cultural exchange stations. The rewilded zones. Do you know what lives in the rewilded zones? He didn't answer. Things that want to eat you, she said pleasantly. Big things. Patient things. Things that have been hunting for 100 million years. And the first thing you learn, the very first thing, before you learn anything else, is that when something tries to corner you, you don't wait to see what happens next. She tilted her head slightly. I've been on this station for 42 days. I've been taking notes for 31 of them. The smile didn't disappear. But something behind it did. I have documentation, Mara continued, of 7 incidents involving current or former cadets in your program. I have Ortha's transfer request, with the original notation before it was edited. I have the message thread between your research assistants that you thought was on the private network. It isn't, by the way. The encryption protocol has a gap that a first-year signals cadet could find, and I found it on day 9. She paused. I sent copies to the consortium's academic integrity office, the station commander, and 3 external advocacy organizations 40 minutes ago, when I noticed you'd sealed the outer lab doors. Another pause. I noticed that, by the way. Immediately. Veyron had gone very still. I was going to wait another week, Mara said. Gather more. But you've made the timeline easier, so. She shrugged. Thank you for that. The academic integrity investigation took 19 days. Dr. Cale Veyron's program was terminated on the 20th. Not suspended. Not placed under review. Terminated, with the particular institutional finality that meant the records were sealed, the certifications were revoked, and the name would not appear in the consortium's official histories except in footnotes no one was meant to find. Veyron himself was removed from the station within the week, pending a hearing before the consortium's ethics tribunal. The 2 research assistants were reassigned under conditions that were not publicly detailed but that the station's gossip networks described as extremely uncomfortable. Orith came back to the medical track. Thessin, the Valari cadet, sent Mara a message that was mostly bioluminescent descriptors that the translation software rendered as something like gratitude but larger. Mara read it 3 times and then saved it in a folder she labeled Good Things. What spread through the station, and then, with the particular velocity of interstellar gossip, through several neighboring systems, was not quite the story of what Mara had done. It was the story of how she had done it. She had been cornered. By a creature larger than her, with institutional power she didn't have, in a sealed room, at night, with 2 additional threats positioned between her and the exit. And she had spent the preceding 31 days quietly, methodically, patiently building the weapon she would need for exactly this moment. A Keth academic who heard the story repeated it to a colleague with a phrase that translated loosely as, she did not react to the trap, she had already set a larger one. A Threxian security officer, reviewing the incident report, noted that the human cadet had identified the compromised encryption protocol on day 9 and said nothing for 32 days. She waited, the officer said, with an expression his colleagues had never seen on him before. She could have reported immediately. She waited until they gave her something better. His colleague asked what that said about humans. The officer was quiet for a moment. It says, he finally answered, that patience, for them, is not the absence of aggression. He paused. It is a form of it. Mara Ellison finished the semester with the highest calibration scores in the med program's recorded history. She accepted a research position the following year. She kept taking notes. She always kept taking notes. On Earth, in the rewilded places, the creatures that survived weren't always the largest or the fastest. They were the ones that understood their environment better than anything else in it. The ones that knew, before the moment of danger, exactly what they were going to do. The station learned this. The station did not forget it.